So Pokemon Day happened not too long ago, and as I am what you could call a die-hard Pokemon fan, I of course watched it. And while I would love to tell you all about my thoughts and feelings on it, I simply won't. Instead, I want to talk to you about a stupid little purchase I made back in the not so wonderful year of 2020, where besides playing Animal Crossing New Horizons all day, I got into the also not so wonderful hobby of shiny hunting. The game I decided to start doing this in will be none other than 2018's Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I got so addicted to this game that eventually I decided to purchase something that I honestly nowadays feel is kind of stupid. This right here is the Pokeball Plus, a Nintendo Switch controller model to look like a Pokeball that was made and released alongside Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. These games are definitely, in terms of their gameplay, the most interesting entries in the series, focusing on a more casual experience where you only have to use one hand to play, and most of the grinding and battling with wild Pokemon has been reduced to a simple minigame where you just flick your controller to throw a ball on screen. Because of this, the opportunity to make a fun little accessory alongside the game was pretty much inevitable, especially as they knew they could easily sell something as simple and dumb as a Pokeball controller and people would buy it regardless of it actually being a good product. And seeing as I own it, you know I speak of experience. So when the Pokeball Plus first released on the same day as Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, you could pick it up for around $50, which is in my opinion a fair price for something that is at its core just a smaller sized Joy-Con with some features missing. If you want to be a bit more technical, this thing is only half the size of a regular Joy-Con, and seeing as people already had an issue with the size of these things, you can imagine that this little sphere of a controller can be a bit uncomfortable if used for long periods of time, but for some quick 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay, I'd say the thing isn't half bad. Using the thing as a standalone controller on the other hand isn't something I would actually recommend, as besides being able to do some simple browsing on the Switch home menu and eShop, the controller only works with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Pokemon Sword and Shield and Pokemon Go. In Pikachu and Eevee, the ball has the most amount of uses, as it's the only one out of the three where you can actually use it as a controller. This game is also where most of the fun from the Pokeball Plus comes from, as whenever you throw a ball to catch a wild Pokemon, the controller will light up and even start to vibrate and make noise. It's actually kind of cute as it's mimicking the actual sound of a Pokeball, but that's not all it does, as if you're successful in capturing a Pokemon, the Pokeball Plus will let out a cry of the captured Pokemon, while also briefly lighting up with the primary color of said Pokemon. Then heading into Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Pokeball Plus gets an absolutely diabolical downgrade in terms of uses, as in these games the only use the Pokeball Plus got is that it can be used as an alternative way to grind XP and make money. Simply import the Pokemon into the thing, and by going on a walk and sometimes giving it a little shake, the Pokemon inside will gain some XP, and if you're lucky they might even end up finding an item. The loot pool of items you can get through the Pokeball Plus is relatively small, with only 5 different items at your disposal, ranging from Pokeballs, Great Balls and Ultra Balls, which are the most common items, all the way to star pieces and rare candies. I do like that this feature exists for people who really care about bringing Pokemon into the real world, but for someone like me, I'd rather just make use of the Dynamax raid dance that are of plenty in these games and just go from there. Arriving at our final stop for the games that support this thing, we got Pokemon Go. In this title, the Pokeball Plus can be used as a handy dandy little tool that will automatically catch nearby Pokemon, alongside also being able to grab items from gyms and Pokestops. I surprisingly enough really like how the Pokeball Plus gets used in this game, even though a lot of the fun of actually playing Pokemon Go gets lost. But then again, I'm also the type of person that just loves to turn on the autoplay feature in any mobile game that allows for something like that. Some of you might also know that the Pokeball Plus isn't actually the only accessory that works with Pokemon Go, as there are 2 other accessories that do the exact same thing, those being the Pokemon Go Plus, which was specifically made for Pokemon Go and released only a couple of months after the game, and the Pokemon Go Plus Plus, which released back in 2023 alongside Pokemon Sleep. I don't own those 2 accessories as I just didn't care enough about Pokemon Go or Pokemon Sleep to get them, so I really don't know a whole lot about them, but I do know that in terms of usability in Pokemon Go, these two work pretty much exactly like the Pokeball Plus, which I would say is a good thing, as out of all the games that have support for these kind of accessories, Pokemon Go is definitely the one game that in my opinion makes the most sense. It honestly kind of sucks that this thing is relatively restrictive, as I would have loved it if I could actually use it in more than just 3 games. Just imagine being able to use this thing in Smash Bros or a 2D Mario or Sonic game. There are actually quite a good handful of games I can think of that in theory would actually work with this controller. It has an analog stick with an A button built into it, a big B button on the top, and has gyro functionalities built into it. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is that the Pokeball Plus could definitely be used in some games, it just never got the ability to do so, as Nintendo and the Pokemon Company don't like it when people have fun. And with that, we pretty much covered everything that there is to talk about the Pokeball Plus. Well, except for one thing, which is the meal you get when buying one of these things. But besides that, we really scraped the barrel of what this little controller slash accessory has to offer. And while I might consider this thing to be a bit stupid, I've actually started to like this thing a whole lot more than I thought I ever would. It's in all honesty still a bit of a stupid thing with only a handful of uses, but I like it and that's all that matters. I just don't really think it's that smart of an idea to invest in one of these, especially with the substantial increase in price. Of course, you can ignore my opinion, but something that you simply cannot ignore is the end of this video, which is exactly right now.